Imagine being surrounded by thousands of people, loud music, flashing lights everywhere, yet in the midst of the crowd, there's something, or someone, that doesn't belong. Something only you seem to notice. And when your eyes finally meet, you feel as if that thing has known you for a long time. That's exactly what happened to Jake Turner at the Nashville Country Music Festival. He thought he was there just to have fun. But that night, he discovered that something had been waiting for him, something he had forgotten, but that had never forgotten him. Are you sure you truly know your own past? Have you ever felt that chilling shiver crawl up your spine when looking at something that just didn't seem right? And what if, in the middle of a crowd, someone or something was staring back, just waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself? At the Nashville Country Music Festival, a celebration of joy and freedom turns into a nightmare when a clown appears, not the kind that performs tricks and makes people laugh. This one is different. He's not there to entertain. He's there to choose. But choose what? Or who? Stay until the end, because this story will mess with your mind in ways you never expected. Now tell me, do you trust what you see? Before we dive into this chilling story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like for more stories like this. Now let's step into this nightmare. The fiery orange sky was slowly giving way to the deep blue of the night as the Nashville Country Music Festival pulsed with life. Thousands of people laughed, drank, and sang along with the artists on the main stage. The vibrant lights from the rides and vendor stalls flickered like artificial stars, blending almost magically with the scent of popcorn, barbecue, and spilled beer on the dusty ground. Everything seemed perfect, except for one detail. In the middle of the crowd, standing between a cotton candy stand and a shooting gallery, a clown was watching. His outfit was different from the performers hired to entertain the guests. Dirty, faded, as if it had been left to the elements for years. His face was painted white, but the paint was cracked in places, revealing grayish skin beneath. The red-painted smile was far too wide, the eyes far too deep. He wasn't doing tricks, wasn't calling over children. He just stood there, waiting. Jake Turner, a 28-year-old man, had already drunk enough to doubt his own eyes, yet he still felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he noticed the eerie figure. He nudged his girlfriend, Emily, and pointed. "Did you see that?" She followed his gaze but shook her head. "What, one of the festival clowns?" Jake frowned. The man was still there, standing motionless, but now something felt off. His eyes were locked onto Jake, as if he recognized him from somewhere. "Dude, that guy's staring at me." Emily laughed, pulling Jake closer to the stage. "You're drunk. Come on, let's enjoy the show." He tried to shake it off, but the unsettling sensation of being watched wouldn't leave him. Even as the music grew louder, even as the lights flashed brighter, he could feel an invisible weight pressing down on his back, a pair of eyes burning into his skin. Then, in the middle of the crowd, something made him stop. A sound, a whisper. "Jake." His blood ran cold. His name. Someone had said his name, but Emily hadn't spoken, and no one around him seemed to be paying him any attention. He turned back. The clown was gone, but deep inside, he knew. It was still there, and it wasn't leaving. Anytime soon. Jake tried to shake off the uneasy feeling as he followed Emily toward the front of the stage. The loud music and the energy of the crowd should have been enough to distract him, but his mind kept drifting back to the clown. How did it know his name? And why did no one else seem to notice it? He glanced around, but all he saw were ordinary faces, smiling couples, friends clinking their drinks together, families enjoying the night. Still, deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the next song began, Emily grabbed Jake's hand and spun playfully to the beat. She laughed, her eyes gleaming under the colorful lights. "Are you going to be like this all night, or are you going to have fun with me?" He forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah, of course. I just forgot to hit the bathroom. Give me a minute." Stepping away from the crowd, he felt guilty for leaving Emily alone, but he needed to clear his head. As he wandered through the aisles between the vendor stalls, the lights seemed dimmer. The lively festival sounds grew distant, replaced by an unsettling silence that crept in around him. Then he heard it. A small bell ringing somewhere nearby. A soft, childlike chime. He turned his head and saw a narrow passage between two stalls, where a flickering light cast long, eerie shadows. Curiosity, laced with an irrational fear, pulled him forward, and that's when he saw it again. The clown stood there, just beyond the dim glow of the lamp, holding a red balloon, swaying ever so slightly. Now, up close, Jake noticed details he hadn't before: the fingers dirty with something dark, the cracked nails, the sharp teeth peeking through lips stretched too wide into a smile. But worst of all were the eyes. They were completely black. No pupils, no light, just empty voids, as if there was nothing inside that body but darkness. Jake held his breath and took a step back, his heart hammering in his chest. The clown tilted its head, and without moving its lips, Jake heard the voice again. "Do you remember me, Jake?" His entire body went cold. The voice didn't come from the outside. It was inside his own head, echoing like an old, forgotten thought. He spun around and bolted back toward the crowd, not daring to look over his shoulder. But even among thousands of people, he knew one thing for sure. The clown was still there, and it wouldn't stop until he remembered. Jake ran without stopping until he was swallowed by the crowd once again. His chest heaved, his lungs struggled for air. He kept telling himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him, alcohol mixed with exhaustion. But the truth clung to him, pulsing at the back of his neck like a shadow fused to his skin. He knew that clown, or at least he should. "Jake, where were you?" Emily appeared in front of him, holding a cup of beer, her expression laced with confusion. "You look pale. What happened?" He tried to smile, but his lips trembled. "Nothing. I just got a little dizzy." Emily frowned, unconvinced. "Maybe we should leave." The thought of getting out of there should have been a relief, but instead a tight knot formed in his stomach, as if, deep down, he already knew that running wouldn't help. The clown had found him here for a reason, and it wouldn't just disappear because Jake wanted it to. Then a memory surfaced, hazy like a whisper lost in time. A circus. Children laughing, the scent of sawdust and burnt popcorn, a tattered red tent swaying in the wind, and blood. He blinked, hard, pushing the memory away before it could fully take shape. But it was too late. Something had been awakened. "Jake, are you even listening to me?" Emily cupped his face in her hands, her eyes filled with concern. I think I need to see something." Grabbing her hand, he pulled her through the festival, ignoring her protests. He needed to find someone, anyone, who could help him make sense of what was happening. They weaved through the rows of carnival games and rides until Jake saw exactly what he was looking for. An old man sitting outside a small trailer, a faded sign hanging above him. Fortune readings, Madame Loretta. But Loretta wasn't there. Instead, a short, hunched man wearing a worn-out hat watched them from inside the trailer. His eyes were small and sharp, as if he could see beyond the surface of people. "Can I help you?" His voice was deep, rough. Jake swallowed hard and stepped closer. I need to know about a clown, one that's here at the festival." The old man raised an eyebrow, but he didn't look surprised. He just sighed and muttered, "So he's back." Jake's heart pounded. "You know who he is?" The man nodded slowly, his eyes glinting under the dim trailer light. "You better sit down, kid, because this story—" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This story isn't about him. It's about you." A shiver ran down Jake's spine. His hands went cold, his breath quickened. He glanced at Emily, hoping she'd laugh and say this was just some cheap festival trick. But she didn't. Her eyes were locked on the old man, her face serious. Something about him was real. Jake swallowed hard and sat down in the worn wooden chair in front of the trailer. "What do you mean? What does that clown have to do with me?" The old man adjusted his hat, lacing his fingers together on the table. His gaze deepened, as if he were trying to read Jake, to pull something out of him that even Jake didn't. "No was there. This isn't the first time you've seen him, is it?" Jake opened his mouth to deny it, but then the fleeting memory came rushing back. The circus, the children's laughter, the smell of blood. A sharp pain throbbed in his skull. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to push it away. I don't. No, there's something in my head, but it's all mixed up." The old man let out a long breath. "Then let me tell you a story." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Many years ago, there was a small traveling circus. It moved from town to town, setting up along the roadsides. Among its many attractions was a clown named Griswald. But he wasn't an ordinary performer. He had a gift, a way of connecting with people, especially children. A bitter taste crept into Jake's mouth. The problem was, over time, Griswold began to change. The children who once laughed with him started to disappear. People whispered that he would say things to them, promises only they could hear. And when the police finally caught on to the disappearances, the circus was torn apart. Jake felt a sharp pang in his chest. And what happened to him? The old man stared at him, his eyes small and glinting like a crow's. Griswold vanished. Some say he hanged himself behind the circus tent. Others believe he was burned alive by furious parents. But some believe he's still out there, waiting for the ones who forgot him. Jake shot up from his chair, knocking it over. "Why are you telling me this? I have nothing to do with him." The old man didn't flinch. He simply said, in a calm, steady voice, "Yes, you do." Jake froze. A pulse pounded in his temples. "He came back for you, Jake, because years ago, you were the only one who escaped him." The world tilted. The festival sounds blurred into a distant hum. Memories buried for so long began clawing their way to the surface. And then, in the reflection of the trailer window, Jake saw him, the clown, standing right behind him, smiling. And in a voice like a dying breath, it whispered, "Now you remember." Jake spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance. But where his reflection had shown the clown, there was nothing. Just the dark expanse of night and the blurred festival lights. His heart pounded, his breath came in short, ragged gasps. He turned to Emily, hoping she had seen something, but her face was frozen in fear. "Jake, What is it? He had no answer. Something inside him was fracturing, like glass cracking from the inside out. The old man in the trailer remained still, watching Jake process everything. "This is insane," Jake muttered, rubbing his face with his hands. "I don't remember any of this. I never knew that clown." The old man leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Are you sure? Or did you simply choose to forget?" The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. His head throbbed. Something inside his mind shifted, like a door that had been locked for a very, very long time. And then the first memory surfaced. He was just a kid. Small. Afraid. The red circus tent flapped in the wind, carrying the sickly sweet scent of cotton candy, soaked in sweat. He remembered holding someone's hand. A small hand. A child's hand. His heart stopped. He wasn't alone. The memory crashed into him like thunder. A little girl, blonde curly hair, bright brown eyes. His sister. "Oh my God," Jake whispered, his legs going weak. He gripped the old man's table. "To keep from falling, I had a sister." Emily's eyes widened. "What, Jake? You never told me you had a sister." He never told her because he didn't remember. Because his mind had buried it so deep that for years he had lived believing he was an only child. But now, everything was coming back. He and his sister had been at the circus that night. They had gotten separated from their parents, and Griswald was there, that wide, too wide smile, those sharp teeth. "He took her." Jake's voice broke, horror creeping in. "He took my sister." The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, and now he's back to finish what he started." Emily grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go now. This is getting way too weird, Jake, please." But Jake knew he couldn't run, not anymore, because now he remembered, and Griswald knew it. If you've made it this far, let me know in the comments. What do you think of the story so far? Are you feeling the tension? Got any theories about what might happen next? I want to hear your thoughts. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Jake felt his blood boiling in his veins. His entire body trembled, but not from the cold. It was fear, and something else. Rage. He had spent his whole life not knowing he had a sister, not remembering the circus, not carrying the weight of this truth. But now everything was there, slamming against his chest like a frenzied heartbeat. Emily clutched his arm tightly, trying to pull him away from the trailer. "Jake, please, we have to get out of here. This isn't real. It's just a festival, just some random He's not just a clown, Emily." Jake's voice came out raw, laced with something even he didn't fully understand. He turned to the old man. "If Griswold took my sister, what happened to her?" The old man sighed, his gaze dropping as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "That's the wrong question, kid." Then he looked up, his expression grim. "The right question is she still alive?" A cold shiver ran down Jake's spine. His stomach twisted. For his entire life, his sister had been an empty void inside him. But now that he knew she had existed, he couldn't accept the idea that she was gone. "How do I find out?" His voice was steady, but inside, he was falling. "Apart." The old man lifted a finger, pointing toward the heart of the festival. "He'll take you to her. But you have to accept the call." Emily shook her head, her grip on Jake tightening. "This is insane. You're really gonna follow some psycho in a clown suit just because some old man at a random festival told you to. For God's sake, Jake." But Jake knew this wasn't a choice. He had to do this. And then the festival flickered. For a split second, everything went dark. The music stopped. The laughter cut off. The world held its breath. And when the lights returned, he was there, standing in the middle of the crowd, right in front of the stage, tall, unmoving, that wide, too wide red smile, those completely black eyes. Griswold. Jake felt something pulling him forward, as if an invisible magnet had latched onto him. The clown raised his hand and pointed directly at Jake, and then, without moving his lips, without making a single sound, the voice rang inside Jake's head. "Come." The festival resumed as if nothing had happened, the laughter, the music, the flashing lights, but none of it felt real anymore. Jake knew what he had to do. He let go of Emily's hand and took the first step toward the clown. Jake moved through the crowd as if in a trance. The voices around him were muffled, distant, like he was crossing some invisible threshold between the real world and something far older, far darker. Emily screamed his name behind him, but her voice was swallowed by the festival's noise. None of it mattered, only Griswold. The clown remained still as Jake approached. When he finally stopped just a few steps away, Griswold smiled, a grin so wide it seemed to stretch beyond the limits of his face. His stench was overwhelming, a sickening mix of mold, damp earth, and rotting flesh. Jake opened his mouth to speak, but before he could utter a word, Griswold raised a hand and snapped his fingers. The festival disappeared. Gone. The music, the flashing lights, the laughter and screams, all of it ripped away as if it had never existed. Only darkness remained, a suffocating void wrapping around Jake like a cocoon. The only sound was his own ragged breathing. Then, a single spotlight flickered to life. Jake blinked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden glow. He was standing in a circus ring, the same circus from his memory. The wooden floor beneath him was old, rotting, stained with dark patches he didn't want to identify. The red tent walls billowed around him, creaking as if they were alive. And in the center of the ring, Griswold waited. Behind him, lined up like broken dolls, stood the missing children. Their eyes were black, empty. Their faces were too pale, their bodies unnaturally still. But it was the last figure in the row that made Jake's heart stop. A little girl. Blonde curls, wide brown eyes. His sister. Jake stumbled back. No, this can't be. Griswold tilted his head. You forgot about her. His voice was cold, jagged, like a whisper seeping out of a grave. But she never forgot about you. The girl lifted her trembling hand. Jake? Her voice was weak, fragile, as if it were the first word she had spoken in years. Jake felt his throat tighten. I didn't mean to forget. His chest ached, as if something inside him was tearing apart. He turned to Griswold, eyes burning with desperation. Let her go. The clown laughed, a deep, grotesque, cavernous sound. Oh, Jake, but you're the one who left her behind. The truth hit him like a blade. He ran that night. He was just a kid, terrified. And when Griswold found them, he ran. He never looked back, and his sister never left that circus. Jake collapsed to his knees. No, I didn't. Griswold knelt beside him, whispering in his ear, Now you can stay, and never forget her again. The children moved, stepping forward in eerie unison. Their black eyes gleamed in the dim light. The red tent shuddered as if it were laughing. The air grew thick, heavy, impossible to breathe. Jake felt cold hands touch his face. His sister. She was pulling him in, dragging him back into that world, into the endless dark. He didn't fight it, because deep down he knew he deserved it. The next morning, the organizers of the Nashville Country Music Festival found a cell phone lying in the middle of the arena. It belonged to Jake Turner, but Jake was never found. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Which part gave you the biggest chills? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I read them all. And if you want more unsettling stories like this, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications and share this video with someone who loves a good psychological horror. I'll see you in the next story if you dare.